Discover the incredible moment when a hidden voice transformed an undercover boss's life forever. Rob felt like a ghost drifting through life, surrounded by the buzz of the retail store, yet completely detached. His suit pressed and polished. He was a mid-level executive in a nationwide retail chain. Yet here he was, standing in the economy aisle of his family's struggling Midwest town, wrestling with expectations. His journey to corporate success had taken a toll on his spirit, and the pressure from family to climb even higher on the corporate ladder made it all the more suffocating. But today, he had a plan to change that. Today, he would go undercover as Bob, a temporary employee. As he entered the store, the fluorescent lights seemed to flicker like the hope in his heart. He met Maria, a radiant single mother pouring coffee into the flimsy paper cups. Her smile was bright, but Rob could sense the shadows behind her eyes. They exchanged small talk, but then, in the warmth of a break room filled with coffee-laden air, Maria opened up, sharing her dreams of nursing that seemed so distant. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever make it," she said, her fingers nervously fidgeting with her ID badge. "I work 2 jobs, raise my kids alone, and still, it feels like no one sees me." Rob felt a pang in his chest, an ache that echoed with the realization of all the sacrifices these employees made each day. They were more than retailers. They were the heartbeat of the store, a family forged through struggle and resilience, a concept he had long forgotten. As Maria spoke, her voice rose with hope but faltered with doubt, and Rob couldn't help but admire her tenacity, her unwavering spirit in the face of odds stacked high. Before he could fully grasp the emotional weight of their conversations, Rob witnessed moments of camaraderie he never expected. Laughter erupted in the aisles, and friendships blossomed in the break room, moments of shared snacks and tales of survival. Yet all of it shattered when Rob learned that Maria, despite her hard work, had been overlooked for promotion after promotion, simply because of her background. Tears stung his eyes as he watched her comfort another employee, her kindness shining in a world that often turned away. At that moment, the conflict in his heart twisted tighter. Maria's struggle wasn't just hers. It reflected the truths of the community he barely understood. Should he speak up, risking his stable job for someone he hardly knew? The weight of corporate loyalty bore down on him, yet a voice inside whispered of justice. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the town's annual festival drew near, the air thick with anticipation and excitement, Rob's undercover identity was set to be revealed. Standing in front of the crowd, heart racing, he gripped the microphone, knowing this was his moment. It was time to expose the truths buried beneath his polished facade, to stand up for Maria and countless others like her. The silence grew heavy around him, the community's eyes fixed on him, waiting. Would he choose to voice the silent struggles of everyone looking to him for change, or retreat into the safety of his corporate shield? The decision loomed over him. Could he find the courage to make that choice? Rob's heart pounded in his chest as the crowd shifted with anticipation. Every hesitation felt like a weight pulling him down, making it harder to draw breath. They were all looking at him, faces lined with hope, pride, and expectation. He could hear the whispering of children, the soft laughter of couples holding hands, and the occasional shout from friends celebrating a long-awaited reunion. Yet all of it blended into a white noise that threatened to drown out his thoughts. He felt the microphone tremble in his grasp. It was only plastic and metal, but in that moment, it felt like the amplified power of his voice was a double-edged sword. Would he really take that leap? As he looked out into the vibrant sea of familiar faces, a little girl in the front row caught his eye. She had pigtails and a hopeful grin, her candy-stained fingers clutching a balloon. He thought of Maria, the way she poured her heart into her work despite the challenges she faced. Her dreams mirrored the innocence in that child's eyes, the yearning for a better life, the relentless hope of making something more of oneself. What if he could ignite that hope? Hey everyone! Rob's voice found its way out, a shaky start, yet the warmth of the festival background buoyed him. "I have something important to share with you all." Cheers and clapping erupted from the crowd, but he could see the confusion mingling with excitement etched on their faces. He took a breath, summoning the courage swirling inside him, fighting against the swirling doubt that threatened to keep him silent. For a moment, he wrestled with his words, thinking of Maria and all that she represented. "I'm not just Bob the temporary employee. My name is Rob," he said, firming up his resolve. Silence fell like a blanket over the crowd, the festivity replaced by an electrifying pulse of curiosity. "I've been hiding behind a job title, thinking that money and status could bring happiness. But I see now that we're all in this together, fighting for a better future." The murmurs began, some gasps of surprise, others whispers of disbelief. But Rob pressed on. "I've met amazing people during my time here, people like Maria, who dedicate their lives to their families while doing everything possible to get ahead. Many of you have been passed up for promotions, overlooked for opportunities, and I am here to tell you that I want to change that." The tension in the air shifted, palpable, like a fresh breeze blowing through the sweltering heat of summer. He was finally breaking through the chains of corporate silence, realigning his loyalty to the community that raised him. "But I can't do this alone," he continued, his voice steadier now, fueled by genuine emotion. "We need to stand together and make sure everyone gets the recognition they deserve." Applause erupted, echoing in waves from the crowd. He felt the energy shift, hope igniting hearts, stirring a fire that had long been dormant. Rob had no idea what the next steps would be, whether he'd face backlash or whether the change he desired would take root. However, the moment felt transformative not only for him, but for everyone present. Then, as he looked around, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. It was Maria, tears glistening in her eyes, but her smile was radiant, vibrant with a warmth that spread through the gathering like wildfire. But just as Rob felt the joy bubbling within him, a low rumble echoed from the back of the crowd. He turned, heart and mind racing. They were here, the corporate representatives sent to assess the store's performance. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted dramatically, tension rippling through the crowd, and Rob's heart sank. What would happen now? Would the courage he'd summoned shatter under the weight of corporate indifference? Would the shift he'd begun be crushed before it could even start? As he took a step forward, ready to confront whatever came next, a voice from the back shouted, "Let us make our voices heard." Rob drew breath, feeling the spark of change flare within him once more. It was time to choose a side. The real fight had just begun. The corporate representatives moved closer, their presence looming like thunderclouds over the gathering. Rob felt the energy drain from the crowd, replaced by tensions cracking through the air. Eyes darted nervously from side to side, uncertainty gripping the hearts of those who had just rallied behind him. He swallowed hard, the sense of empowerment shifting beneath him like sand. One of the representatives, a tall man with an impeccably ironed shirt, stepped up to the microphone. "We have some concerns about," he began, but the crowd wouldn't let him finish. Rob could feel their voice rising like a wave, fueled by adrenaline and hope. It was as if they were standing on the precipice between silence and a shouted demand for change. "Let him speak," shouted a woman from the middle of the crowd, her fists clenched in solidarity. "Enough of the corporate games," yelled a man with a broad frame, echoing the sentiments swirling around them. Rob looked at the sea of faces he thought he knew so well, filled now with determination. His heart thumped louder than it had moments ago as he felt the urgency of their hopes. "Let us not let fear silence us again," he called, his own voice rising above the rumble. It was a small reminder, his own resurgence of belief. The representative cocked an eyebrow. "This isn't how we operate. The company has procedures, and those procedures have held us back." Rob shot back, feeling the flame within himself ignite again. "We're tired of waiting for someone else to tell us how to live our lives. We want to stand together, to fight for each other." The tall man stepped back, visibly shaken. Rob had struck a nerve. Uncertainty flickered in the eyes of the onlookers once more. Every breath he took seemed to draw energy from the moment, urging him to take that step forward. Suddenly, Maria broke through the crowd, her eyes fierce and shining. "Rob's right. We deserve more than what they give us. We are more than numbers on a spreadsheet." A cheer erupted, voices intertwining, uniting under the banner of their shared struggle. Rob's heart leaped. He glanced back at Maria, seeing not just a friend but a warrior standing tall among them. Their dreams were intertwined, their fight matched. The representative hesitated, looking back at the people before him. You can't expect to bring change with shouts alone. Action requires structure. The words hung in the air, heavy with doubt. Rob knew this was the critical moment, the tipping point. And how do we create that structure without our voices? He asked, a fire igniting behind each word. The system allows for change, but only if we push for it. We need to talk, to collaborate, to dismantle the silence together. The crowd roared their agreement, gathered in determination, a wave of energy surging toward the representatives. Rob felt on the edge of something monumental, like standing at the brink of a new beginning. Suddenly, the representative nodded, an uneasy smile breaking through his uncertainty. All right then, let us open the floor for discussion. A flutter of excitement rushed through the crowd. Was this really happening? Rob felt a new resolve growing stronger, changing the game. Their voices would matter. But just as discussions began, a sharp, crackled voice came through a speaker system. Attention, everyone. We need order. This is not an open forum. Chaos erupted, anxiety creeping back in as the crowd instantly turned into a mass of anxious murmurs. Rob stood firm, heart racing. Could they lose this chance so easily? With quick determination, he shot up his hand. We won't let that happen. We're not going back. Yet, in the turmoil that followed, doubt crept back in like a thief in the night. Would this fire be snuffed out before it could truly ignite? Would they back down again? As the crowd continued to swell with voices and confusion, Rob realized this battle was only the beginning, but what lay ahead would require more than courage. It would require trust, unity, and sacrifice. And just then, a shout pierced through the chaos. Let us stand up for what is right. His heart racing wildly, Rob knew the fight was far from over. But what if, instead of just fighting, they banded together to create something new? Choosing to lead, Rob thought, how do you start a revolution? The tension in the air felt electric, a thick fog of anticipation that clung to every person in the crowd. Rob stood at the front, fists clenched and heart pounding. For a moment, everything felt like slow motion as the eyes of his neighbors rested on him, a mixture of hope and fear reflected in their faces. What would he say next? He took a deep breath, channeling the fire within him. Change doesn't come from those who hide behind boardroom doors. He shouted, his voice carrying through the chaos. It comes from people like us, who wake up every morning ready to put in the work. The crowd surged with energy, a wave of voices rising up in agreement. Rob could see the tremors of excitement ripple through their bodies, uniting everyone in a shared purpose. In the back, Maria was still fighting hard, rallying people to him, her passionate words flowing over the crowd. This is about so much more than just a workplace issue. It's our dignity, our lives. We need to reclaim our narrative. The representative shifted uncomfortably, watching the growing fervor with a mixture of concern and realization. For Rob, it was a pivotal moment. They were no longer just a group of employees. They were a movement, a living entity fueled by collective pain and aspirations. But then, with a cutting clarity, the corporate representative's voice boomed again, slicing through the fervor. Listen, we can discuss your concerns, but hurling insults and interruptions will get us nowhere. Rob clenched his jaw. The corporate voice was just a thin barrier over the ground quake of emotions swirling around them. It's not about insults, he countered, his heart racing as he pushed further. It's about honesty. It's about the truth behind those closed doors. You may want order, but we want what's right. His words sparked an explosion of agreement from the crowd. Someone near the front shouted, "We are not going to be silenced." A chorus of chants erupted, repetitive and powerful. Rob felt the gravitational pull of unity. Everyone was echoing a desire for change, for recognition. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows of the corporate side, a woman in a crisp blazer, her expression stern and resolute. With a commanding presence, she stepped onto the stage, her gaze fixing on Rob. "I'm here to listen." Her voice carried authority, but it was softened by a hint of empathy. Shock rippled through the crowd. Could this be a moment of real negotiation? Rob glanced back at his supporters, searching their faces for signs of hope mingled with skepticism. "Then let us talk." he shouted, leaning into the energy surrounding him. Let us lay it all on the table. We need transparency. We want to be part of the solution. The woman narrowed her eyes, as if weighing the fire in Rob's words against the chill of her corporate obligations. All right, we can arrange a meeting to discuss these points further, but what? Rob interrupted, his pulse racing. We can't go back to business as usual. If you truly want to listen, then be ready for honesty on both sides. The charged atmosphere thickened. The representative's demeanor shifted, uncertainty flickering amid his polished exterior. The crowd leaned in, breaths held, as transformations hung in the balance. Mesmerized, Rob noted the flicker of awareness in her eyes. Was that doubt or a burgeoning realization? The energy crackled with potential. Shouts mingled with murmurs, words of agreement and defiance colliding. They were teetering at the edge of something tremendous. Rob's heart raced as he thought about the implications. But then, amidst the fervor, a single thought reset his focus. Could it be that they weren't just fighting against something, but instead building something new together? A structure that allowed voices to be heard, that promoted change? Suddenly, a voice broke through his musings. This is just the beginning. Someone said from the back, and Rob felt the chorus of agreement swell again. Fire lit up in his soul. As doubt slipped away, clarity bloomed. Let us create our future, he shouted, and the crowd roared back there. Approval, igniting the atmosphere. What if this was the starting point? The moment they reclaimed not just their voices, but their stories? As the representative looked back, Rob caught a glimpse of determination sparking behind the uncertainty. A partnership could be forged right here, right now, or would they simply return to silence once more? The stakes were high, emotions ran wild, and Rob felt the ground beneath him shifting with every heartbeat, preparing for a leap into the unknown. Yet one thought lingered fiercely: what if they truly could rewrite their narratives? The crowd pulsated with a restless energy, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Rob's heart thudded like a drum as he watched the representative process his words. The moment felt fragile, as though a breath could shatter the possibility of connection. All right, she said finally, a hint of steel in her voice. If we are going to move forward, I need you to back off on the emotion for a moment. We can talk about facts, solid solutions. That's where change happens. Rob felt a knot tighten in his chest. This was the same approach that had led to so many frustrations in the past. Facts were important, but emotion was the glue that bound them together. You think we can shift the narrative without acknowledging the pain? The struggle? He shot back. Urgency seeped into his tone. The murmur in the crowd shifted as they reacted. Maria was right behind him, her heart on her sleeve. Why can't both facts and emotions coexist? We're not robots. We're people. Exactly, echoed another voice, rising from the mass. We can't just be data points. We need to be heard. Silence fell for a beat, weaving through the charged atmosphere. The representative glanced nervously at her team. For all her authority, she was clearly trapped between the people she represented and the cold veneer of her corporate role. Holding his breath, Rob stepped forward slightly, urging the momentum. This isn't just a numbers game for us. It's our lives, our stories, our families. Just last week, my neighbor lost her house because of cuts we didn't even know about. Those cuts came from decisions made without our voices in the room. Gasps echoed through the crowd as eyes turned from Rob to each other. They were opening their hearts. Rob's passion ignited a spark that both terrified and exhilarated him. Do you even understand what your decisions impact? He continued, desperation tinging his every word. These are not just contracts and balances for us. They are family dinners ruined, bank accounts drained, futures being rewritten under the weight of choices made far above our heads. For a moment, the representative's expression softened, but it quickly crumpled into a look of conflict. She crossed her arms tightly, revealing the internal battle waging within her. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, hunger for acknowledgement dancing in the air. In that moment, an old man with a weathered face stepped forward. All we want, he croaked from the back, is to be treated with dignity. We've given you our hearts, our skills, our good faith. We deserve that in return. His words hung between them, imbued with gravity and a plea for recognition. The tension coiled tighter, and Rob knew they were reaching a tipping point. I can help facilitate a meeting, the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. That doesn't mean we'll agree, but it's a start. Maria chimed in excitedly, her eyes lighting up. We would love to have the chance to discuss our needs. The crowd erupted in shouts of approval, voices united in a chorus of yes and hope. Rob felt the elation swell within him like the tide, but he knew it was just a beginning. The clouds were parting, but the journey to the light remained. As the murmurs calmed, Rob looked deep into the representative's eyes. But this is not just about meetings or numbers. This needs to be about rebuilding trust. It's about creating a space where we can all feel safe to share not just the good ideas, but the hard truths. The weight of the moment pressed on them all, and for the first time, Rob saw a flicker of understanding in her expression. You're right, she conceded. Change doesn't happen overnight, it requires courage on every side. But even as he embraced hope for the future, doubt nagged at Rob. Could they really change the culture once steeped in silence into one built on honesty and collaboration? I believe we can, he declared with renewed conviction. So let us move forward together. Let us show them the power of our collective voices. The crowd's energy peaked, pulsating like a heartbeat in solidarity. Rob's heart raced, unsure if this was their moment of transformation or merely a prelude to deeper struggles ahead. What if this spark ignited something much bigger than they ever imagined? As silence enveloped the crowd, anticipation hung again in the air, formidable and electric. The atmosphere crackled as anticipation swelled within the crowd. In the midst of the electric silence, Rob felt the weight of hopeful gazes resting on him. The air smelled of determination. He could see the old man's weathered face illuminated, eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and pride. Maria lingered close by, her breath coming in quick and shallow bursts, mirroring the energy pulsating around them. Together, Rob repeated, his voice barely above a whisper, yet firm enough to reach the ears of everyone present. We can show them that our community is more than a series of statistics or reports. We are stories, we are lives intertwined. For a brief moment, the representative looked down. The flicker of recognition in her eyes faded as she cleared her throat. I don't know how they will react, she finally admitted, glancing swiftly at her team. This is a challenging environment. You're asking me to raise voices that have been silenced for too long. But Rob could feel the collective heartbeat through the crowd, thrumming with an urgency he had never experienced before. He took a step closer. Every voice deserves to be heard. We are not invisible, he urged, his own heart racing with every word. If you take this step, we'll meet you halfway. We'll make this work. A palpable tension hung in the air. The representative chewed her lip as her expression wavered. Rob glimpsed the embers of doubt in her mind. Maria, emboldened by Rob's words, piped up, and we will show you what happens when we come together. We can offer perspectives, solutions, and our ideas, not just to save our neighborhood, but to inspire change everywhere. Her enthusiasm rippled through the circle of faces, igniting nods and murmurs of agreement that surged like the tide. They were leaning in, ready to invest their voices into the conversation, and Rob could feel energy surge like a wave beneath them. We need people like you, willing to listen, an empowered voice called out from the front. Not just at meetings, but in our lives. You can stand with us. The representative straightened at that remark, looking around the crowd that had visibly transformed since she began this discussion. Her cold exterior started to thaw, and Rob sensed her gears turning in real time. Okay, I'll take this back to my team, she said more firmly, though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. But I can't promise anything. A loud cheer erupted, reverberating through the air, and Rob felt his heart swell. For the first time, the fight felt less like an uphill battle and more like a shared journey. This was the kind of connection he had hoped for, the kind where walls potentially started to crumble. Then, as cheers turned to chatter, a heavier worry crept in. What would happen if the moment didn't evolve into action? Was this merely the start of a long and painful fight for recognition? What if the conversations went nowhere? The representative took a breath and spoke with more conviction. If we do this, it's going to take more than just words. It will require work, commitment, and honesty on both sides. Are you ready for that? Rob exchanged hopeful glances with Maria, his heart racing even faster. We're ready, he asserted, almost instinctively. But at that moment, a new voice rose from the back, almost mockingly. What if all this goes wrong? What if they don't even care about us? The crowd silenced, shadows of doubt creeping in once again as eyes flitted nervously. The murmurs died, replaced by the weight of insecurity. Rob looked into the eyes of his neighbors, feeling the fears simmer beneath the surface. He was reminded of the battles they fought every day, the sacrifices and the losses. This can't be how it ends, Rob vowed internally, fueling his resolve. An overwhelming conviction surged within him. What if we got this wrong? What if that voice of doubt spoke the truth? As the crowd waited in stillness, hearts full yet uncertain, they lingered on the edge of the unknown. Rob turned back to the representative, the silence between them stretching taut. Could he rally them again? Was he strong enough to rekindle their confidence? And what would happen when he revealed the extraordinary truth that lay ahead, the courage wrapped in vulnerability that could bring an entire system to its knees? Are we willing to leap? He finally asked, the question hanging in the air, poised on a precipice of change. At that moment, they all felt the thrum of anticipation anew, uncertainty mingling with the piercing hope that they might truly ignite something transformational. The air grew thick with an energy that Rob could nearly taste. As he scanned the faces of neighbors, each one held a mix of hope and fear, brimming over with expectation. The moment felt suspended in time, teetering on the edge of possibility. All that was left was one small push. What if, Rob began, his voice steady but soft, that voice of doubt was actually a challenge? What if we took that doubt and made it our fuel? A few heads nodded, hesitant yet intrigued. His words felt like candles flickering in the dark. A woman from the back of the crowd stepped forward, her tear-filled eyes capturing the sun's fading light. I've watched everything we built slip away, she said, her voice cracking under the weight of memories. I want to believe, but it's hard. Two children beside her clutched her hands tighter, as if they were the only lifelines in a storm. Rob felt his chest tighten. This was more than just their community, it was their lives. To be afraid is human, he replied, locking eyes with her. But to let fear win? That's a choice we don't have to make. We can't change what happened, but we can shape what's next. The representative stepped forward once more, her demeanor shifting to something more open. You're right. Facing fears is challenging, but also powerful. Change doesn't happen in comfort zones. A murmur cascaded through the crowd. Pockets of encouragement popped up like wildflowers. We can try? Someone whispered, a spark igniting hope. Another voice called, we've already fought for so much. What a little more? Rob could feel the energy pulsing anew. It felt tangible. There was a unity in their shared determination, a collective heartbeat that raced toward possibility. Maria took Rob's hand, her grip firm and reassuring. He squeezed back, silently affirming his promise to see this through. With a surge of resolve, Rob boldly declared, this is our moment. If we take that leap, we won't fall together, we'll soar. The crowd erupted into cheers, clapping and shouting, a wave of emotion spiraling upwards. But lingering doubts hovered on the fringes. As smiles adorned faces, Rob slid his gaze back to the representative. Would she truly take this back to her team? Or was this the end of the line, a beautiful illusion that would quickly dissipate? The representative was quiet for a moment, weighing her words carefully. I want to try, she said at last, a new strength in her voice. If you promise to stay engaged, I'll advocate for your stories. But you must show me that you're ready to put in the work. A sense of relief washed over the crowd, followed by an undercurrent of fear. Rob knew this path wouldn't be straightforward. We'll show you, Maria proclaimed, the hint of a challenge rising in her tone. We'll prove that we're serious about change. More people stepped forward, offering their own stories, their own voices, blending into a powerful chorus ready to echo beyond that moment. The vulnerability of their fears transformed into strength that bound them together, like threads woven into an unbreakable tapestry. As they rallied together, Rob's heart swelled with pride. But just as relief washed over him, an unsettling thought crept in. What if they weren't enough? What if they stepped into the light only to be dimmed again? Listen, Rob said loudly, his pulse racing. Whatever happens next, we take this journey together. We might falter and stumble, but we lift one another up. Remember, we do this for each other. We deserve this. The crowd quieted again, but this time in contemplation. Heads nodded slowly, affirming their fears and hopes intertwined. And then, from the back, the earlier voice of doubt returned, sharper and more piercing. But what if nobody cares? What if we're just shouting into the void? The eerie silence that followed felt suffocating. But beneath the weight of uncertainty lay an ember, just waiting for someone to breathe life into it. Rob took a deep breath, preparing to respond. A new idea began to form, a glimmer of hope that could ignite this fire one more time. But would it be enough? Would they rise, or would they fall into silence once more? Rob held his gaze steady as the silence filled the gathering. He could feel the collective breath of the crowd, each person hanging on his next words. Doubt lingered thick in the air, but somewhere within him, a spark ignited. He was determined to fan that ember into flames. What if, he began slowly, the voice of doubt isn't the enemy? What if it's a call to challenge ourselves? What if we could transform every what if into a stepping stone? The crowd stirred, their expressions a mix of confusion and curiosity. Maria shifted beside him, sensing the energy crackling around them. With each beat of his heart, Rob felt the weight of his neighbor's fears, but there was something else, a thirst for change, for connection, for fight. I know it's hard, he continued, leaning into the crowd. I know some of you have lost everything. But think of the things that have not been lost. Think of the love we have for each other, the stories that bind us. A man near the front, who had been quiet, stepped forward. His hands trembled, but his eyes burned bright. I've been afraid to speak up. Every time I try, it feels like no one listens. But I want to try? Yes. Someone from the back shouted, encouragement flooding the atmosphere. Rob's heart began to race. Exactly. Together, our voices can't be ignored. We are not invisible. Each story is a thread, and when we weave them, we create a tapestry that no one can overlook. As he spoke, he looked around at each face. Black, white, young, old, they were all standing together, their hearts beating to the same rhythm. A series of nods rippled through the crowd. The representative listened intently. I believe you, she said, her voice firm. But you need to connect with the right people. We have to be strategic. Rob felt a swell of hope mixed with anxiety. Then let us be strategic. Let us find those connections. We won't just be voices in the crowd. We'll be a movement. The crowd erupted again, but this time it was different. There was a spirited determination underlying the excitement. Together, they chanted, we stand together. We stand together. The phrase echoed in the twilight, each repetition igniting a fierce sense of commitment. Maria squeezed Rob's hand tighter as they stood united. The children beside the woman with tear-filled eyes now grinned, a lightness lifting the gravity of their circumstances. Rob's spirit soared. They were building something, fostering hope, creating a vision for what their community could become. But just as the energy reached a peak, doubts crept back in. Would they really stick together when real challenges arose? Would the fire that burned so bright today dim tomorrow? Rob swallowed hard, his voice softening with sincerity. We will face struggles, but let us not be afraid of those struggles. They will teach us, grow us. We're doing this for our families, for our children. More people remained silent, reflective, but finally, the once dubious voice piped up again. What if we can't keep the momentum? Looking to the future is scary when so much is at stake. Rob formulated a response in his mind, searching for that unbreakable thread of hope. He felt it stirring within him, urging him to speak, an urgent thought begging to escape. But it rattled against his chest. With every ounce of courage, he opened his mouth, ready to share that glimmer of possibility that could bind them even tighter. Would it be enough to silence the voice of doubt for good? As he took a deep breath, anticipation thrummed through the crowd, wondering, waiting. Rob's heart raced under the weight of the moment. He inhaled deeply, the cool evening air swirling around him, then poured his soul into his words. Every single one of us has faced fear. It's as real as the ground beneath our feet, but we can choose how we respond to it. He could feel the crowd leaning in, curiosity mixed with longing. What if, he urged, we refuse to let doubt dictate our paths? What if we choose vulnerability? What if we share our fears, our hopes, and build a bridge instead of a wall? The man from the front, emboldened now, spoke again. I'm scared of stepping out of my comfort zone, but I need to for my kids. They deserve better. His voice quavered but rang with raw honesty. Yes, Maria shouted. the fire in her eyes matching Rob's own growing passion. We must strive to be examples for our children. They must see courage in us. Nodding heads and murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. The sense of community began to solidify. They were no longer scattered. They were a collective heartbeat. I know that fear can paralyze us, Rob called out above a clamor of encouragement. But it can also be the catalyst for change. When we stand together, our fear transforms into strength. Our voices become the harmony that breaks the silence. An elderly woman, her face wrinkled with experience, raised her hand. It's hard for someone like me. I've seen too much, lost too much. But I know my time isn't over. How do we fight for others and ourselves? We fight with our voices, Rob replied, his determination echoing not just in words but in the energy rippling through the crowd. We fight with our stories. We share. We connect. And we show this community the power of togetherness. Maria stepped closer to him, her confidence invigorating. And let's remember, our stories matter. They can inspire others who feel lost. Rob glanced at Maria, their eyes locking for a moment. She was right. In a world that earned indifference, sharing stories could craft a lifeline of hope. Think of the musicians who tell stories through songs. Think of authors whose words open our eyes to new perspectives. Our lives are a narrative waiting to unfold. Let us gather those stories, the man insisted. We can compile a book of us, a book of hope. The excitement swelled again, ideas blossoming like wildflowers. People began to call out, each thought more vibrant than the last community events, storytelling nights, gathering their experiences like treasures. Yet, as the excitement surged, a familiar knot twisted in Rob's stomach. They could fire up the energy now, but would they maintain that drive in the days and weeks to come? What hurdles would they face tomorrow? Would the high spirits give way to reality, a reality peppered with voices of doubt? I want this too, he shouted over the clamor, voice passionate yet vulnerable. But the question remains, can we keep that flame alive when the going gets tough? Can we promise ourselves to support one another in those dark moments? In the crowd, silence cloaked them as they absorbed Rob's words. Hope collided with uncertainty, and for a brief second, the air felt electric with possibility but heavy with truth. And just when it seemed the moment couldn't stretch any longer, a young voice piped up from the back, small yet powerful. We're all afraid, but we can be brave together, right? The truth of that simple declaration cracked through the ambiguity like a beacon. Rob's heart swelled. This was the kind of sincerity he hoped to cultivate. This was the beginning of something promising. Yet he knew the journey was just beginning, rife with its own trials and tribulations. As the crowd began to murmur in agreement, their warmth rose like steam in the cool night air. But deep inside him lingered another question, a flickering flame waiting to ignite. What would happen when the storm came? Would they weather it together, or would their resolve shatter like fragile glass? And as Rob gazed into the faces of the crowd, now lit with determination, he pondered the critical next steps. He realized they would need a plan, a structure to ensure their voices not only rang out, but transformed. What would that next chapter look like, and how would they begin shaping it? A wave of clarity washed over Rob as he looked at the faces around him. Each glimmer in their eyes reflected a mix of hope and uncertainty. They all wanted to believe, to transform not just their immediate struggles, but something far deeper, the very fabric of their community. All right, everyone, let us put those dreams into motion, Rob shouted, his voice rising like a beacon through the charged air. We need an action plan. Let us gather our stories, ideas, and dreams. Each of us has a voice, a unique perspective. Together, we can reshape our future. Excited murmurs filled the crowd, and Rob could feel a bond beginning to form. They were no longer a group of individuals. They were a united front. Maria stepped forward, her determination shining through. Let us create a committee. We can meet regularly to share our stories and strategize our next steps. We need to show that we are committed, not just in words, but through actions. Yes, someone shouted, and the crowd erupted in a chorus of agreement. Rob's heart surged with vibrancy. They were ready. This was the moment they could solidify their unity. Let us meet here every week, Rob suggested, feeling the excitement stir. We can take turns sharing our experiences, what works, what doesn't, and support each other along the way. This can grow into something powerful, a force for change. The old man from earlier stepped forward again. And let it be a place for questions too. We should write down our concerns, everything we feel has been wronged. Let us present them when we meet with the corporate representatives again. That's brilliant. Maria nodded, and her excitement spread like wildfire through the crowd. We'll gather everyone's experiences, their challenges. If they see the faces behind the data, how can they ignore us? As people began exchanging ideas, the atmosphere buzzed with inspiration, a lightness washing over the crowd as they brainstormed ways to connect their stories into a unified voice. But Rob felt an undertow of deeper concerns. Would they maintain this momentum when efforts faced setbacks? Later that week, as Rob returned home, he felt the weight of responsibility sink in again. He hadn't just committed himself, the entire community had entrusted him with their hopes. His family's legacy represented corporate success and stability. Yet here he was flipping the narrative on its head, fighting for people in everyday struggles who had often felt overlooked. He wanted to be their voice, their champion. Days turned into weeks, and the energy of hope became sharper. With each meeting, individuals shared their tales, stories of resilience, heartbreak, and battling against obstacles that felt insurmountable. With each session, they laid down foundations built on trust. Then came the day they'd scheduled to meet with corporate representatives again. Rob stood in front of the crowd, the air crackling with anticipation. The community buzzed with nervous energy, excited yet anxious about what the corporate world's reaction would be. Today isn't just about our stories, he began, seeing the familiar faces around, all brimming with raw emotion. It's about our courage to demand change. We have fought for our lives, our families, and our futures. The crowd as cheers rose, fueled by unity. Each heartbeat echoed their determination, fierce and unwavering. As the representatives arrived, Rob felt his heart racing. The tension wrapped around him like a cloak. Would the corporate wall still loom, or would these stories create pathways for understanding? When the meeting began, Rob took a breath, standing tall and resolute, gazing into the eyes of the representatives as he shared not only his journey, but also the stories of his community. He spoke for every person who had felt unseen, for each sacrifice that had gone unnoticed. We are not just numbers on a spreadsheet, he passionately declared. We are human beings with dreams, families, and aspirations built over years of hard work. We deserve better. As he finished, his heart settled into a rhythm that pulsed with hopeful expectations. He could see the representatives exchanging glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes as they processed everything. One of them finally spoke up, their furrowed brow easing. We didn't realize the depth of these struggles, she said slowly, the weight of their indifference threatening to crack. You deserve recognition more than just words. We need to collaborate on real changes. A thunderous roar erupted from the crowd. They had made a mark. They felt empowered and united in their shared mission. Rob's heart swelled with pride at witnessing the transformation unfold. In the weeks that followed, meetings turned into actions. Committees formed, voices gained momentum, and positive changes began trickling through the corporate structure. The town rallied in ways Rob never could have imagined. The energy shifted. Laughter filled the aisles where silence once loomed. But as excitement thrived, Rob understood there would always be challenges ahead. Undoubtedly, their hearts would meet more grief and disputes, but he also recognized the spark they'd ignited was a flame strong enough to battle any storm. As he looked out into the crowd at their next gathering, a warmth enveloped him as the bonds grew deeper. Each voice uplifted the other, and within that magical tapestry woven from shared struggles arose something bold, something new. And in that moment, Rob knew they were not just creating change. They were crafting a legacy, one built on unity, mutual respect, and the unwavering strength of the human spirit. Rob seized the microphone one last time, his own voice steady and loud. If our journey teaches us anything, it's that we need to embrace our doubts and push through together. This is our moment. This is our power. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound echoing through the night, a vibrant melody of hope rising up from the very roots of their united beings. Rob felt the tears of joy welling in his eyes. They had risen together, transformed. The weight of the world hadn't crushed their spirits. Instead, it had ignited the flames of resilience that would echo across generations. This was not just the end, It was the beginning of something extraordinary. Now, more than ever, it was time to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel for more inspiring stories of change and resilience. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this powerful journey. Comment your thoughts about this transformation and how it made you feel. And most importantly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need a reminder of the strength in unity. Don't wait, not even one more second, to support this incredible movement.